So I've read in best practices to never apologize before making a presentation, so I'm not going to. I am, however, just going to briefly explain that. I tend to not wing things and do a lot of preparation and dry runs for presentations, and all of my dry run practice time this morning disappeared because I and a few others were helping Chris and the rest of the committee given the whole situation. So you will now get to see what it looks like when I wing something. It may not be pretty. It will probably mean mainly that I stare at my notes a lot as I'm talking. So that's just where we are, and hopefully we'll still all have some fun with this because, boy, this was a weird bug and a fun one. So that all being said, I forgot to introduce myself for those of you who may not know me. I'm Mark Lemmert, lead developer of Nox Archaist, and thanks for coming or tuning in to our session today. So before we talk about cows, let's talk about storms. As you may have heard, 6502 Workshop recently rolled out the first ever expansion released for an Apple II game. Released by the original developers. Nox Archaist Lord of Storms was released in April. And many thanks to my teammates who worked on this project and the original game that it is based upon. And many thanks to all the players for their support and the Apple II community at large for their support, especially our beta testers and Patreon members. So I guess this means that we're not a one-trick pony. Having now done 2 releases now. But we're not here to talk about ponies, we're here to talk about cows. So, without further ado, we'll get to the cows. So earlier this year, a player who goes by P2e on Discord managed to turn Lord British into a cow in Nox Archaist. After the abrupt transformation, his cowship is still invincible, though he quickly loses interest in the battle and mostly eats grass. So am I standing in a good spot for the live stream?
Yeah.
Okay, just double checking.
No, it looks great.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we've done some investigation into how this happens. First, we noteth that to reproduceth this event, thou must cast thine Cowmageddon spell in the denomination of 3. Casteth thine spell not to 4, nor shalt thou cast it twice, unlessing, of course, thou proceedeth to thrice. 5 is right out. Now, the fact that this is the year of the Apple III, and you got to cast the Cowmageddon spell 3 times, what a wonderful coincidence. It is just a wonderful coincidence in so many ways. So we think that casting the spell, Cowmageddon spell, precisely 3 times, it summons the Holy Cow Grenade of Minok, and the Holy Cow Grenade landed on Lord British, and then things got downright silly from there. Seriously though, it looks like the root cause of the manifestation of Lord Cowbrish is a problem that is common to many bugs in Apple II games. We'll take a dive into the details soon, but let's actually take a look at this bug for those of you who have not actually seen it happen on screen. Going to boot up Nox Archaist in Micromate. Our friends at Paleotronic were nice enough to let us use Micromate as the wrapped emulator around Nox Archaist that we sometimes refer to as the Nox app.
Nox Archaist.
Micromate is tech sniping you, Chris, here on the sound capability.
Oh, now there's the mockingbird.
We'll put Chris out of his misery here and just skip ahead. So this is the actual disk image that the Discord user P2E sent me, and he had saved the game here right by Lord British. And so the next step is to do what so many of us have done over the years in an Ultima game or a game that Lord British is in, is, well, let's attack Lord British and see if we can take him. So that's the next step here. And the Cowmageddon spell, for those who have not played Nox Archaist or gotten that far in Nox Archaist, because this is an end game spell. It's a level 9 spell and there's 10 levels. What it does is it randomly summons cows that just kind of rain down on the screen. And if a cow lands on an enemy combatant, it squishes them and they disappear. So the spell kind of gives you a tactical advantage of a lot of distraction because the mobs will start attacking the cows and things. But then also, you know, usually a couple of cases per casting, you'll actually take out a couple of the mobs or enemy combatants through that squishing effect. Now, Lord British, of course, is protected from that. That I foresaw to make sure that he could repel said cow attacks and all of that. So what we're going to do here, other than show off a little more Mockingbird music for Chris. Boy, he's glad we didn't have it play constantly throughout the game. Yeah, right. So we're going to cast Cowmageddon 3 times, as discussed before. Summonitus Lavash. I'm going to put the mouse cursor here on Lord British so we can keep track of him. And here's the second casting. And thrice. Oh! There he goes. And where's our mouse? Yeah, so there he is right there. And then the mobs will get their turn here. And look, it says Mad Cow attacks Lord British, missed. So that, the first thing that told me as I was looking at this for the first time was, okay, on some level, the game engine still seems to think that object there is Lord British. It looks like a cow, walks like a cow, talks like a cow, but something there is still Lord British-esque. So that was an important clue in the debugging of things. So the root cause of the bug, in summary, and then we'll dive into detail, but in summary, it is a 8-bit index overflow, which has been the cause of many Apple II game bugs. For example, there are some games that have a limit for stats like strength and intelligence of 255, and if you increase your stats above 255, they roll over to 0. Particularly common in like early 80s games, and then eventually, you know, developers, you know, had seen that and started to try to anticipate that and set up checks for that and so forth. But throughout time of Apple II time, the 8-bit overflow has managed to cause a lot of bugs at one point or another. So
Cast the spell 3 times, just 2 to the power of 3 is 8.
well, that is a very interesting observation. It actually is not why 3 is the lucky number here, but that's a very interesting observation. 3 just keeps coming in here in so many ways, trying to tell us something. So let's go back to the other screen here. How do I get out of full screen mode? Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this in a way that doesn't require knowing assembly language to follow the logic. The map object data for mobs exists in memory from the address BF00 through BFFF, a 256-byte array or chunk of memory. Each mob has 8 bytes per record. and that stores information like its XY position on the screen, the tile ID for the mob, and the tile ID is what determines what shape is drawn or tile is drawn. Flags and some other data make up that 8 bytes. Half of this 256 byte array is reserved for summoned creatures, like cows, which means we have a maximum space for 16 total summoned creatures, 16 cows. When the Cowmageddon spell is cast, there's an 8-bit index which points to this summoned creature section of this mob array, the upper 128 bytes. And this index gets incremented each time a cow is created so that it gets created in the next record sort of up the array. And let's see, what was I illustrating here? So this was just an illustration of the 8-byte map object record. So this would be like mob 1, mob 2, mob 3, and so on down the line, all the way up to the very last record would have an index value of F8, hex F8, and then that would cover it would end at FF. So let's take a look at an example of how an index can be used. So the index is added to a base address resulting in a target address. The target address is usually an address that the program is going to read or write data to. And I did this illustration in hex and in decimal. Decimal, it's really easy. You got a base address of 40,000 and your index is 8. Then your target address is 40,008. So if your index was stored, let's say, in the register Y, you could say do a write to 40,000, comma Y, and if Y equals 8, that means you're writing to 40,008. That's kind of the general idea of indexes, and it's nothing unique to assembly. That goes on in lots of languages where you're using offsets and things like that. But it does exist all the way down at the processor level, the concept of using an offset to a base value. This chart shows the target memory address for creating each cow object record over the course of 3 castings of Cowmageddon. So as shown in the formula column, the index is being added to the base address of BF00, and again, this is because the first half of the array is used for mob data, and the second half is used for summon creatures. And for whatever reason, when I did the original architecture, it gets implemented as, okay, so the first summon creature goes at BF00 plus 80, which is decimal 128 to get you to the first record in the second half. I could have just made the base address BF80 to start in the middle, but for whatever reason I didn't. In any event, each spell summons 8 cows, and when the second cow, or I'm sorry, when the last cow of the second casting is summoned, it's going to be the line right above, we got the yellow highlight line, the line right above that is the last cow of the second summoning. And at that point, 16 cows have been created, and the index value at that point is F8 in hex, 248 in decimal. The first cow of the third casting is the yellow highlight. And when that happens, the index is incremented by 8. So F8 plus 8, or 248 decimal plus 8, well, that results in an index value of 100 hex, or 256 decimal. A single byte can only hold the values 0 through 255, and the 6502 processor is designed to handle this overflow by rolling over the byte value to 0. As a result, when we go to the second cow, we end up with an index value of 8 and it's an index value of 8 either in hex or decimal. And since we're working with a base address of BF00, the cow gets created using the memory in the very first record at BF00, which is reserved for mobs, not for summoned creatures at that very first part of the array. Well, guess whose object record data is at BF00? Lord British, because BF00 is the start of the mob array, and he's the only mob. Of course, I think of him more as an NPC, but from a game engine perspective, once you're in combat, you've got the player, and then you got the mob, and then you got stuff that gets summoned. That's just the way the game engine logic is structured. So that's why I'm sitting here calling Lord British a mob. But yeah, so that's how it lands right in that spot in memory. So let's take a quick look at the fix for this bug, which after testing out, I promptly removed because this bug is just entirely too silly not to keep. I look at it as kind of like the wizardry summon or identify bishop number 9, that they just kept in for any, patches or ports or whatever, just became part of the game. And so the fix came down to 2 bytes. No, it would be funny if it was 3, but no, 2 bytes. Right here, D027 at memory address 9C11 fixed it. And the reason that it fixed it is because those opcode, that opcode and instruction value triggers a branch to the exit routine of the loop that is doing the summoning of the cows. And once it exits, well, then doesn't summon any more cows. The branch triggers if the routine here, combat.special or combat.spell.create.special, special is just what I called stuff that's summoned for some reason. So if this routine detects an overflow, it passes a code, which I have documented here in the accumulator register. This routine is going to return the value 01 if an overflow occurs. And I didn't have this line here, the D027, which translates in assembly to bne.exit. I didn't have that in there, nor did I have my documentation comment there either. Essentially, the functionality to detect the overflow was in the subroutine, and I entirely forgot to use it. And I forgot to use it because Cowmageddon is a special summoning routine. All other summoning spells, and there's like 6 summoning spells in Nox Archaist. You can summon a bunch of skeletons, or you can summon me, you can summon Nox Fred, you can summon all kinds of things. But all those other summoning routines use the same top level spell routine for efficiency, reusable code and all of that. But the Cowmageddon spell was so different than the others in terms of how it worked that it ended up becoming kind of its own top level spell routine. Still shared some of the lower level summoning code, but sort of had its own driver, if you will. And what ended up happening was, I copied and pasted a bunch of stuff from the sort of like the main summoning routines into, well, now I'm creating the special one. And somewhere in that process of copying and pasting stuff over, I managed to not copy over that little critical part, and here we are. So that was the fix. And this does beg the question, I would imagine, as to whether or not this shirt is still accurate. Lord British undefeated in Nox Archaist, which I have a picture somewhere of Richard Garriott wearing this, which is pretty cool. He loved it. Since in Ultima, there's always a way, for like the first 7 games, they tried to make it impossible to kill Lord British, but then there was always a bug or something to figure it out. And then after that, they just had fun with it and made it Easter eggs. But he thought that was pretty fun, that finally there was a Lord British in a game where Lord British cannot be defeated. And as to whether it's still accurate, the answer is yes, because the turning Lord British into a cow doesn't really defeat him, doesn't, quote unquote, kill him, if we want to use that terminology. Chris himself tried, and others, to continue the battle after Lord British became a cow, And while Lord British, again, loses interest in the battle and mostly eats grass, he still repels all attacks. You can't take him out. So it's effectively a draw. And therefore, sure, it is still accurate. Though, I will have to footnote, though, to give credit where credit is due. Back in the 80s, killing Lord British was a quest that many undertook. And it was always based on, at least as I ever heard about it, it was always based on, in-game mechanics, using in-game mechanics to do it. What Rickles undertook was the challenge to see if he could hack the game and manage to defeat Lord British that way. And he attempted once in beta testing and fought Lord British to a draw. And then a couple of years went by, and I don't remember exactly how it came up. We were chatting on the Nox Archaist Discord, and he thought that he could probably pull it off now because he's the developer of Deathlord Reloaded. Familiar with the game Deathlord? Rickles basically remastered it into something that's still fun, but not nearly as brutal as the original as far as some of the quality of life aspects of it. And in the process of doing that, he learned a whole ton of stuff. And so he turned his skills towards hacking Nox Archaist and trying to kill Lord British. And he was successful the second time using a bunch of tools that basically hacked into Applewin, pulled a bunch of information out of the machine state, and was able to narrow down where in memory I was hiding his invincibility code and the backup to the invincibility code. And there were a couple layers of protection in there. Needle in a haystack to find. Cucumba may have been capable of doing it the old-fashioned way, but of course he's disqualified by having seen the code and optimizing it. But Rickles was able to do it through very cleverly getting some modern tools to do the work to narrow down the paths and get to the region of memory where it was stored, and then just look through the assembly code in that area and pinpoint it and make a little change, and voila, he was able to do it. So want to give him full credit where it's due of having succeeded through hacking the game to defeat Lord British. But in terms of the traditional in-game challenge, still stands. So that's the story on the cow bug. Before opening up for questions, I have just a few more things. If you don't already have Nox Archaist Lord of Storms, it is available on our online store as well as on Steam and Good Old Games. And we've received many requests for a full sequel to Nox Archaist and are thrilled that there has been so much interest in the game. And to support the project for Nox Archaist 2, Dragon's Mirror, we set a goal to raise a minimum of $1,000 a month and ideally $1,500 a month in pledges on Patreon by August 15th. And we're currently we've met the minimum goal and are at about 70% of the ideal goal. Many member benefits, there are many member benefits, including for some tiers listing in game credits, an inside look at the development process through quarterly updates, and a monthly developer live stream video chat. I realize this is unusual for an Apple II project. My life circumstances are different than they were 8 years ago when I started the development of Nox 1, and I don't have nearly the free time now that I did then. However, my day job is being a freelance consultant, and I have a lot of flexibility, and support on Patreon means that I can spend less time doing consulting and more time on game development. So there is a pathway here, I think, to get it done. For those reasons, I'm asking the community for help. And many thanks to everyone who has pledged support. And thanks to the entire Apple II community for the supportive environment that has made Nox Archaist possible. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Any questions? Yes.
So you get the bug report from your user, saying that, hey, I can do this. He sends you the file and you play it, and you see it on the screen for the first time. Hey, he's right. What's going through your mind when you're like, what? You know? You remember?
Oh, there were a whole bunch of things going through my mind. There was, this was during the beta testing of Lord of Storms, and I'm thinking like, okay, so should we fix this? Should we not fix this? What's even causing it? Is this constitute a defeat of Lord British? Because it wasn't clear at first, and if it is, what do we do with that? We probably want to announce that. I should give Richard Garriott a heads up before we say anything. I've got like 1,000 things going through my mind in space of about 5 seconds. But gradually took a breath, unpacked it step by step. Talked to Chris, sent the disk image over to him. He kicked it around for a while. We put our heads together, and but overall, it was a very positive feeling because no matter what the outcome was, whether it meant this was the first in-game defeat of Lord British or not, I thought, wow, this has got to be, if it was, it would be like absolutely the silliest way to kill Lord British ever in the history of games that Lord British was in. so those were some of the thoughts that went through my mind. Other questions? Martin?
Just a reminder to summarize the question
Yes.
for the audience. And also, I'm curious, what's the development tool chain for Nox Archaist? Like, what assembler do you use and other tools?
Great question. So just to do that, actually, the last question was, what were the thoughts that went through my mind when I first, when the user first sent me the copy of his game where I saw the Lord British bug? That was what the last question was I was responding to. And Martin's question, tell me if I misstate this, but was what assembler do we use? What tool chain do we use? Is that the?
Yes.
Okay. So what we used for Nox Archaist 1 is going to be entirely different than Nox Archaist 2. For Nox Archaist 1, we used an assembler called SBASM, and the tool chain was, we used Cadius to put files on disk images. That actually we would continue to use. We used LZ4 compression for maps and for dialogue, which has a Windows side packer and a 6502 unpacker that Cucumber wrote. There's a variety of other tools, if you can call them that I cobbled together in Microsoft Excel for creating pixel graphics, creating maps, big tables of items with statistics and on items and spells and things like that, which is a variety of reasons why I chose that path and thought it was the best at the time. And looking forward, there's going to be some changes. We're going to switch cross assemblers probably to 64 tasks. Basically, it's a lot faster is the big reason. On the SBASM, it takes a full 2 minutes to run the build process for Nox Archaist. And it started out very fast. But once we got up to 600,000 lines of code and data, which is what it clocked in at the end, 2 minutes, even on a modern computer. However, a lot of that has to do with SBASM is written in interpreted Python and a cross assembler like 64 tasks, or many others that are written in a compiled language, much faster. I plan to rewrite map editor, pixel editor, data management tools, so I no longer have tables of item data in Excel spreadsheets. I'm going to rewrite all of that in some C# apps, and it'll be much more efficient going forward as a result. Other questions? Ken?
Does Lord British know about this bug?
I never got around to talking to him about it because it wasn't an actual defeat, which, if that was the case, I, would have felt immediately that I needed to report to the king, so to speak. But no, I have not had a chance to reach out to him about this. I will at some point. And I'm sure when I do, he will get a judicious, or not judicious, get a virtuous laugh out of the whole thing.
What was the question?
Thank you for reminding me to repeat the question. Ken asked if Lord British knows about this bug, and that was what my answer was to.
And will he be in the sequel?
Yes.
What was the question?
I'm very bad at remembering to do this. Ken asked a second question of, will Lord British be in the sequel? And the answer is yes.
Does he know that?
Yes.
Yes to what?
He's mean.
He's me.
This is a teachable moment.
Yes.
What if I want to get a box copy of Nox Archaist so that? How do I do that?
We have 3 box sets of Nox. Chris asked how to get a box copy of Nox Archaist if you don't already have one, or if you already have one but haven't opened it, or you have one and have opened it but would like one to put on your shelf that's unopened. The answer is we have 3 boxes of Nox Archaist left that Chris really does not want to put in his suitcase and take home. But they actually probably are going to be the last that we make for the original game. We've done 5 production runs, and which have sold out except for these 3, and they actually sold out a while ago. It's been sold out on the website, but we set aside a couple for KansasFest that we bought to the vendor fair, and we've taken the temperature on another run through a pre-order, and there just isn't a whole lot of interest in that because most people that have one, want one, have one. But like I said, if you happen to not have gotten one yet and you'll want one, or you've got one but maybe you want a second so that you've got that pristine copy for the shelf, or so you have one to open if you already put one on the shelf, this is probably the last chance. Just see me or Chris. Yes?
I'm curious, how many, you said 5 runs, how many copies have been made in total? Please repeat the question.
Yeah, you really got to remind me that every time. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with that. The question was, how many box sets have we sold in total? The answer is over 1,000. And since we're talking numbers, that's box sets. If we're counting digital copies, it's over 5,000. And that is that's for a variety of reasons, but the way I think it would be appropriate to sum it up is that we the Apple II community know that we're not that big, but the retro community at large embraced our stuff. Our not ours just in my Nox Archaist, but ours in our Apple II style. And everything was embraced by a much wider audience. There's Commodore fans playing it. There's Atari fans playing it. There's people that they don't necessarily even have a retro machine, but they just have a passion towards any games that have a 80s or 90s retro look and feel. So when we put it up on Steam and Good Old Games, that brought a whole lot of eyeballs to it that had an interest in retro, that are not plumbed into sort of like the usual channels, the usual social media sites, would have had no idea that it existed. And did I or Chris or anyone on the team expect any of that to happen? Absolutely not. I mean, we went from the very early days of hoping that tens of people would play this game to there, and it's been a wonderful experience, incredibly fun, and most indie, I don't know if you call this an indie game, but most indie games, because there's so many of them and it's so hard to get noticed, most indie games don't sell anywhere near 5,000 copies. So we're like in some kind of top percentile, even counting modern indie games. That being said, obviously 5,000 is not, a million copies. It's not enough to build a commercial game studio off of or anything like that. So we have no illusions that this is ever going to, cause Chris and I to quit our day jobs or anything like that. But it is a very fun project, and it has been really awesome to see all the interest and support for it. So many thanks to you all and to everyone who's been involved with it. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks for attending the session and checking this stuff out here, and I will get off the stage so we can get on with it. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and if you did have time to watch the video of the Lord British Cowbug session, or if you saw it live at Rockers, thanks for taking the time to do so. Here's a quick summary for anyone who has not seen it. Earlier this year, about February to be exact, right in the middle of the beta testing of Lord of Storms, the Nox Archaist expansion that was released in April. At about that time, a player who goes by P2e on Discord managed to turn Lord British into a cow in Nox Archaist. After the abrupt transformation, his cowship is still invincible, though he quickly loses interest in the battle and mostly eats grass. And definitely that was not expected, though I immediately started laughing when I saw the report and checked it out. The player P2e identified that the bug only happens if you cast the Cowmageddon spell 3 times. Yes, the number of the casting must be 3. 5 is right out. The irony of this is not lost on me, being that this is the year of the Apple III. The root cause turned out to be a classic 8-bit overflow. There's only memory space for 16 cows or other summoned allies, and each casting of Cowmageddon summons 8 cows. And so the first cow of the first casting ends up overwriting the map object record for Lord British, which stores the value controlling the tile displayed on screen. Lord British's character stats and invincibility flag are stored elsewhere, though. So all that really happens is Lord British looks like a cow, and the game engine still thinks he's Lord British. So the answer to the age-old question of has Lord British been defeated in-game using in-game mechanics is no. It was a draw, essentially, and it is also worth noting that there is somebody who you've all met earlier today or met before, Rickles, who has managed to hack Nox Archaist and outright kill Lord British. He actually did a live stream doing that. That was a lot of fun, and he's the first person to do that. So definitely want to call that out. Was a pretty cool accomplishment that he did, because it's really buried in the code pretty deep. And but like I said, in game, using in-game mechanics without hacking the game, Lord British remains undefeated. He just remains, in some cases, well, a cow, at least until you reboot. Then it's all good. So that is the summary. Are there any questions at this point? I'll check out the Zoom chat and the Discord here.
I see one. Jesse asks if there's any news on the 2GS version. We'd like some cows too.
Yeah, that I really don't have any news on that any more than the last time I talked about it, which is just, Burger Becky's working on it. She doesn't have a lot of free time, so it's nothing that I expect is going to happen anytime soon. But I mean, you all know, or many of you know, how passionate Burger Becky is about the Apple II and the 2GS in particular. So I fully expect that it's going to happen at some point. But I really don't have anything directly to do with the development of the project, so can't really speak for her any further on that. Other questions? I see Rickles posts. I already covered that with his feat there with Lord British, and then Quinn posts, I don't think Mrs. British would consider that a draw. I suppose probably not. That's a fair point. Bernie asks, is Burger Becky here today? Not that I know of. I haven't seen Becky. If anyone else is, let us know, and maybe she could tell us something about the 2GS version. I'll switch over to Discord, see what we've got going on here.
Jesse Blue asks, are there any other game elements that player misused? Ultima allowed to push cannons all over the place. I mean, we should probably just bring Rickles on to respond to this, because he pioneered most of them. Yes, there are other game elements that player quote unquote misused, exploits, if you will. For example, there's a way to bring your dodge skill up to the maximum in about a minute. And well, if you have crank the emulator up to the maximum speed, which means essentially nothing can hit you. There's some good grind points where you can get your characters up to a maximum level in a matter of minutes. And ultimately, these exploits have been strung together by Rickles, of course, to be able to speed run Nox Archaist and win it in 20 minutes, which requires those exploits, but also requires having been through the game before to see how the sort of linear plot within the open world plays out, and essentially poke at it and figure out where you can shortcut it. And I actually intentionally allowed it to be shortcut or left the door open for that, thinking that might make things more interesting on replay. And so far that seems to have been the case, because many people have followed along with Rickles' exploits on that with the speed running, done it themselves, and it's all just been a whole bunch of fun. So just looking back for other questions here. Lady Ilaros, not a question, but a comment. If you speed run it on real hardware, you're looking at about 3 to 4 hours. And that is a good point. The 20-minute metric that Rickles established, which is impressive, no doubt, was on an emulator at maximum speed. And Lady Ilaros gave it a whirl on her real 2GS, running at 1 megahertz. So not even at enhanced 2GS speeds. And that, I guess that's our comparable metric: 20 minutes versus 3.5 hours. Now, of course, 3.5 hours is still pretty darn fast, considering that on a first playthrough, players were averaging between 60 and 100 hours. So there is that. How much time do I have left, Paul?
Oh, there's I don't know, probably like 3 minutes or something. We don't have to use it all, but if you have something sort of 3 minutes long you want to say, sure.
Yep, I didn't see any more immediate questions, and I just want to say, in closing, I have a quick update on the Patreon push that we're making for Nox Archaist 2. Dragon's Mirror, of course, behind me is some work in process art for that. We've received many requests for a full sequel to Nox Archaist and are thrilled that there's been so much interest in the game. To support this project, we've set a goal to raise a minimum of $1,000 a month in pledges, and ideally $1,500 a month. And I'm thrilled to say that as of today, we've achieved not only the minimum goal, but we've raised 75% of the ideal goal, which was the result of new Patreon members and previous members increasing their pledges. There are many member benefits, including for some tiers listing in the game credits, and an inside look at the development process through quarterly updates and a monthly developer live stream video chat. I realize this is unusual for an Apple II project. My life circumstances are different than they were 8 years ago when I started development on Nox Archaist 1, and I don't have nearly the free time that I did then. However, I am a freelance consultant with a lot of flexibility, and support on Patreon means that I can do less consulting and spend more time on game development. And so there is a path to make this happen. And so for these reasons, I'm asking the community for help. Many thanks to everyone who has pledged support, and a big thank you to the entire Apple II community for the supportive environment that made Nox Archaist possible. And if there's time, I'll just take one last quick look for questions.
Looks like sort of confirming the speed run, and a lot of congratulations on the crowdfunding. That's really cool.
Thank you. Appreciate the congrats and all the support, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you all today.